Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week I was a little worried I wouldn't have anything to talk about, but a couple of shows came on the wire and debuted and got really interesting really quick. So I was able to have something to talk about. And a couple of shows that were kind of on the fence are finally starting to get their dubs are starting to get finished. So things that weren't quite finished thanks to the Christmas break are filtering back in. And then, a show didn't really meet my expectations at all and just... But the fact that I'm already at 3 shows that I like, well, 2 that I like, is a start. As opposed to like 5 or 10 of them, which I already ditched like at this time of winter anyway. So I'll see where a lot of other shows end up, because 3 shows does not a season make. But I've had anywhere from 4 shows that I like to 8 per season ever since I started doing this. But for those unaware, this is just talking about anime that have debuted, and if I'm a week out, I'm a week out. If it's dubbed right away, I'm up to date on it. I'm going to have a spoiler warning right now so people know, if you haven't seen these shows, I might spoil something. They're more general thoughts than anything like a deep dive. But because they roll into each other as the season progresses, like things I talk about tend to be spoiled. So I throw that out there. And most of these are for, say, Crunchyroll and Netflix on occasion. Most of the shows here are from Crunchyroll. One is on Netflix as well. So if you have that, I will tell you which one. But by and large, I'm always like a week behind or up to date as I can be. So if you're ahead, you're ahead. That's fine. So you may not be spoiled on anything. Who knows? But at least with the 2 shows that I did watch and enjoy, there's something we're talking about. I'll start with Sentenced to be a Hero. This was kind of nuts because it was all fighting almost all the time. And it was a bunch of fighting. And a lot of the fight scenes were kind of crazy. The premise is, if you're a hero, you're basically a prisoner. You're a slave. You have caused some ruckus in the world that has been so thoroughly freaking demonstratively bad. You are going to be reincarnated over and over and over again, and people are going to spit on you, hate you, despise you, all that shit. So you go around killing things as kind of a secret service kind of, secret agent kind of thing. But the person in question is Xylo Forbart, voiced by David Matranga. His whole thing is he used to be a knight, but he did something really, really, really bad, and I'll get to that in a minute. But he did something really, really bad, and he's a pissy man with a pissy attitude. But I kind of like that. I kind of like it when they have a pissy attitude, but they're also like grounded in reality, because a lot of the show is about, look, you people are stupid. Let me do my fucking job so I can save you. I don't wanna, but I gotta save you, so I'm gonna begrudgingly save you. That's a good, interesting angle to take for this kind of guy, because he isn't like an unwitting hero. Like, it's his job. He's old enough and wise enough to know you can't reason with these things. Kill them. They're gonna kill you instead. You don't want to follow my directions? Well, sorry, you people are dying. I know what I'm doing. Let me fucking do my fucking job. I kind of feel refreshed. And it'll actually, later on, I'll talk about what this show reminds me of more than anything else. But like, it takes an hour. Like, the intro episode is an hour long. It's like half of a movie. And he's just going around killing these demons and fighting this demon lord in this forest, and he's blowing shit up and killing things with like these explodey throwing knives that he's got. He's basically like Gambit, where he throws a knife and they explode. So instead of cards, he's using like throwing knives that blow shit up. Pretty neat. And like, it's gross and vulgar and disturbing, but in a way that's like exciting rather than kind of exploitative, because I remember Clevites, I think it was last season or 2 seasons ago. It felt exploitative. And they were trying so hard to be dark and edgy without really knowing how to make the characters fit. This one is different. This one feels like it knows it's kind of dumb and revels in it, but when the main character needs to, he doesn't come across as kind of just there. He's the one taking initiative. Xylo is just, I want to kill things because that's my job. It's very relatable. Don't read any of that. More so that's like, you do what you have to do to get paid. You do what you have to do because you have to do your job. That's kind of what I meant. His job is to kill things. That's what I meant. Anyway, but yes. So it's like the realistic nature of some guy just doing his job whether people want him to or not. The dirty part of jobs. I like that because he's not the standard namby-pamby protagonist because we have so many of those. But it's also not like the young adult, I'm trying so hard and I'm super great at everything. No, he's lived in. And I think that's kind of what I've been wanting, is somebody who's kind of lived into this sort of situation and has been dealing with it for so long that it kind of feels like he's done it. And then you find out he's a former knight. And it's like, yeah, he's lived in this war-torn hellscape forever, and he would kind of just brush up against people in a kind of an annoying way, because you do a thing for so long, you get ingrained in kind of a, this is my job, let me do my job, tell me what I gotta do, and then leave me the fuck alone. You know, you want to be nice to people, but sometimes you're also just like, I know how to do this, don't bother me. I like that. It's cool. So he's dealing with this thing, and he happens upon his friend who's this weird, also a hero kind of person that's just like very stealing. He likes to steal stuff. Like, they're trying to help these knights that are transporting this cargo. And if you've seen any of this whole coffin business and cargo business, you kind of know where they're headed. It's a girl, because it's always a girl, or it's a dude. Sometimes, very rarely, it's a dude. But by and large, you usually see transporting cargo, coffin in an anime, it's usually a girl. So lo and behold, it's a goddess. And this goddess is voiced by Emmy Lowe, who is Mao Mao and Mistress Kate. And I'm just like, yeah. It was like, as soon as I heard her voice, I'm like, yes, this is great. And she gets to do sort of like Mao Mao as gremlin noises, like Teirita is just this goddess who's like, please praise me, master. I want head pats. And I just was like, I don't get it. I don't care. I like it. Because it's the sort of levity that the show was needing, because it was just a bunch of fights and a bunch of swearing. So I was like, yes, give me a character like this who's absolute, just so sure of herself, but doesn't know what she's doing other than, I want head pats because I want you to be my master. And he's spending the entire episode being like, no, I don't want this. So they meet the commanding officer, and she's like, you stole our goddess? You bastards. And then he just goes, and Xylo just goes, no, just let me do my fucking job, because this gigantic turtle fly looking thing is coming to wreck everything, and he's doing a good job of it, sending waves of people after you. You've wasted all your resources. And the episode just keeps going, keeps building. The fight scenes just keep getting more and more crazy. So then he decides, all right, enough is enough. You've been wanting me to be your, you've wanted me to accept you as a goddess. I'll do it. So against orders, because he was basically like left with no choice, he and Teirita form a pact, and she just sends daggers and swords from the sky and blows everything up, because that's what she can do. And you find out that his whole arc and setup as a character is he has been disavowed by the church and the knights and a bunch of shady ass people because he killed a goddess, even though he seems like a reasonable person, saying, well, she gave us the reason to do so. She was going to turn into a demon. And then you realize that it's like, oh, they're playing a riff on the Shield Hero thing, because in Shield Hero, the first episode is like the best episode of the whole show, and then it just gets worse. But that first season of Naofumi basically like being a fucking vengeful asshole because people were mean to him, that's kind of Xylo setup. And I'm like, yes, you're doing it, but you're doing it better. I love it. Because the problem with Shield Hero was it went traditional harem show and kind of goofy, and then, season 2 happened and just, But the initial, like, couple of episodes before it went all comedy was some dark-ass shit. This was played even darker. But again, not to the point of exploitation, just, I don't even know if you can keep it going. That's what I wonder, is like, can you keep the intensity of this sort of premise going when you've already shown these large-ass scale things as like the first thing you do? How are you going to escalate it? But I also believe that the main characters are going to be such that they're either super annoying or they're going to be relatable and fun. And I hope that comparison to Shield Hero Season 1 is what I get, rather than he just keeps getting more and more people around him and it just becomes annoying and it's just dumb, or that Teirita becomes annoying because, there's going to be more to her than just wanting head pats, I'm sure. There's going to be more to Xylo than, life sucks and I got to do it because this sucks, but I'm going to kill things. You can't have 12 episodes like the first one. But this was one of the best examples of a first episode because you want to hook people. And you explain your premise, you explain your characters, and I dig it. I want this to be my favorite of the season, and that's a high bar to clear because the next show I watched was the best thing of the season as well. So it's like you had two things so good back to back, and I was like, oh, okay, this is good. So the other show in question, this is the one that's on Netflix as well as Crunchyroll, and that is Shiboyugi. Shiboyugi, not Yuki. Yuki is the main character. Shiboyugi playing death games to put food on the table. I was a little worried at first because this show is very deliberately paced. It is very slow, and it also pulled the like double or triple length early episode premiere, and it takes its time. Unlike Sentenced, which puts you right in the thick of things and almost doesn't stop, this deliberately makes it so you have to be with these people, and you see a lot of slow shots. You see a lot of weird panning shots of stuff. You hear a lot of narration from the characters, but then what they do is that they make you wait. Because the premise of this show is exactly what it says. You're in a death game, and, these 6 people are in this death game, and you have these people who've never done it before. You have people who've done it maybe a first or second time, and then you have Yuki, voiced by Susie Young, who's done it 20 times. I think she was like 22, 23, 25, something around there. And much like Xylo, she kind of knows what she's doing, but she's willing to save people, but you also kind of get this sense that when she's narrating, she's also like kind of thinking very logically and very cold and calculated, and being like, well, you can't predict what a death game scenario is going to be, an escape game, because you have these 6 people, at least in this iteration, you're trying to escape. And she tells them there could be traps everywhere. There could be solutions everywhere. And if you're used to death games and escape games and puzzles and stuff, this stuff may or may not suit you, or you may look at it and you may fawn at it and be like, this is too slow, this is too dumb, I don't like this character. I don't watch a lot of death game and escape game stuff. The only ones I really played were like Danganronpa and Zero Escape, but I'm not in it really for the puzzles. I'm more in it because it's a visual novel and I kind of like the characters here and there. But I'm not like a puzzle person. I'm not like an escape game person. One of the few shows I remember being like a battle royale, escape game, death game kind of thing was Future Diary, like 15 years ago. And I've sworn that one off just because of some of the things that show does with and I have not rewatched it since. I know I'm gonna have to get around to it, but it's but anyway, you can see where I don't do this as a genre. Horror stuff, death stuff, escape game stuff. If I watch it and I like it, okay. But I'm not so used to it that I'm like just immune and desensitized. So the things I saw in this really threw me for a loop because they ran the gamut from very straightforward, being like, okay, get shot by a trap. Okay, ran into a trap, whatever, to this is kind of messed up. But not in a gross, gory way. The show doesn't show death a lot. It's very PG-13 in that kind of sense. It's more the tone that it goes for when the deaths were happening. And I won't say who, but several other girls other than Yuki are put in bad situations. And some of them die, some of them survive. But Yuki is trying to save them. I found that refreshing. I found it refreshing that she tried to get to know people, but also understood that, like, only get to know them enough that it's like, save them after. One of the things she would say was, don't pray for people while you're in the death game because it may not matter. Keep that with you and pray for them after because you might survive, and that carry with you because this is going to force you to become strong. So that when she does a thing later, and then you just like, whoa. Okay. Because she flat out says to people, trust me as much as you can, but don't implicitly trust me because it might come back to bite you someday. So there's a dichotomy at play with her character that I also liked, because in a different way to Xylo, she understood her reasoning. It's like, I have to survive. I can't have the luxury of trying to save everybody if the answer doesn't call for it. She thinks analytically of the situation and goes, if I have to sacrifice somebody, well, them's the breaks. It's a sucky situation to be in, but it's also an engaging thing from a character standpoint because you have to think logically of like, you've been following this narration and you've been following this person forever, and you think, okay, she's a bad person. No. She's a good person. No. She's a person first. And in the situations that she finds herself in, she has to make judgment calls. She wants to save everybody, and she's willing to do so until it becomes infeasible to expect that to always be the answer. So that's what I found most engaging. That and the fact that decisions that were made by other characters in the most heated moments made the slow stuff worth it because it built it's suspenseful. That's what I would say this is best at, is suspense, because you're just kind of waiting for the shit to hit the fan. It makes you work for it. The characters themselves, other than Yuki, I was not like so into, and some of the visuals and some of the design and some of the speed of the show, maybe not great, but when it wanted to hit a set piece, when it wanted to make a certain kill, when it wanted to make a point about a character, it did it, and it was amazing. And I felt that it earned the suspense that it was going for. Maybe it won't for other people, but I found this to be on par with Sentenced to be a Hero in a different way. So you had two competing shows back to back that were just so good right off the bat, and I wonder if both are going to keep it up, because I'd love that. Because again, you have Frieren coming back. Like, you're not competing with Frieren, but being on a par below that is not a shame, because that's a sign of a strong, good season. And who knows, I might end up liking those as much as I like Frieren. It's going to be hard. I just rewatched it. I remember just how fucking good it was, but there it is. You know, 2 shows right off the bat that I was like, all right, I love this. I want to see it. Contrast that to the first show I dumped, which was Hana-Kimi. It was just girl goes to Japan, becomes a boy. Well, doesn't become a boy, but dresses like a boy to meet this person. And it becomes a reverse harem situation. Oh boy. All right. Do you do anything with the premise? Not really. So she goes to the school. She meets the 4 dudes. They don't sound all that interesting as characters. The voice acting is, I mean, you know, I'm not really all that interested. And none of the characters really look like anything. I'm like, okay, you're doing a play off of the Oran Host Club thing where the girl is dressing like a dude, but you're flat out telling us right at the beginning that, yeah, I mean, it's fine. At least with the Host Club, you had the comedic aspect. This is just playing for harem's sake. It's an otome show. It's nothing. There was nothing there, and within like 5 minutes, I was just like, nah. Like, I don't want to see. Like, I just got done watching 2 shows that I thought were really freaking good. The gap here is quite intense. I know you're not going to stick with it. It's fine. I did also get to another episode of With You, Our Love Will Make It Through. And that, again, that show at least has stuff as far as romance goes. I don't think the episode that they got back to was all that exciting. Oh, hooray, they go shopping and they're friends now. And they meet up and they're doing a culture festival, because of course they're doing a goddamn culture festival. It's a high school anime. But whatever, you know, they're going to do the culture festival thing, because of course they're going to do the culture festival thing. But that's fine, you know. At least, you know, that show's getting towards its conclusion, because again, there were shows that took a couple of weeks off of dubbing because of winter holidays. So it was like, all right, well, we'll finish it. They got to finish Gachi Akuta as well. I think To Your Eternity is also coming back as well. Spy Family is done, but To Your Eternity, I think more episodes are coming. So that as well. So I have 4 shows already. Frieren, To Your Eternity, finishing up With You, Our Love Will Make It Through, and Gachi Akuta. Those will be kind of the tail end of last season. But then adding in Sentenced to Be a Hero and Shiboyugi, I'm like, this has the potential to be a really good season. So, you know, some seasons I end up with like 5 or 6 shows, or even 8 or 10. Last season I was only really good for 4. But maybe this will be a good season for me. But we'll see. But that'll do for today. And let's see what stuff I've got to talk about next time. So I did an episode on Suikoden, so that's going to be next week. But I'm going to re-review Bravely Default. I rewatched Bravely Default, the original episode from a couple years ago, and I think this one is going to be going into more like concrete details rather than the setup. Like how the fights went, how the ending was, how the characters were in the time loop, rather than here's the setup for the game. Because if you want to hear that stuff, the original review kind of suffices. But this one will dig into more of the frustrations, and there were a lot of frustrations that I had with kind of chapter 5, chapter 6, chapters, and even like earlier chapters 3 and 4. But realistically, chapter 5 and 6 and the final bosses, the fucking dreariness of fighting so fucking much. It took me 100 hours to beat that game, and I was just like, you know, so I want to talk about it again, because we're getting into that stage where it's like, okay, now I'm actually playing some games that I've probably reviewed before, so I have a little bit more knowledge about them directly, having played them for content. Speaking of stuff I did for content, there's No Sleep for Kaname Date. I played that before Bravely Default, and played that over the summer and fall, and that was nice and quick, and it was fun. There was next up after that, we're getting into anime. It will be Maquia, Let me try that again. Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms. See, when you need to talk, you can slow yourself down and enunciate. Good. But But yes, Maquia, When the Promised Flower Blooms, is really freaking good. And I watched it a few months back. Man, that was such a good movie. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to talk about it, and you want to see it. I can't stress that enough. Speaking of things to play and see, there's Final Fantasy VI. I'm trying to get into like one Final Fantasy or two Final Fantasy episodes per year, give or take, a podcast. And this is probably going to be this year's Final Fantasy VI. And I don't need to talk about Final Fantasy VI more than I have to, because I know I will. I'll probably spend hours on it if I'm allowed to. But my God, it's fucking great. I don't need anybody asking me whether I like it. I've put it as my second favorite one. And it was my favorite for a time until 10 ran back and took it. But, you know, I love Final Fantasy VI. I play it so many freaking times. I know it. And then, speaking of re-reviews, I'm going to bring back Apothecary Diaries now that Season 2 is over. But I'm going to be bringing Lee Clips along because we watched it alongside some other shows recently. So she watched it, and then we were watching Season 2 together. So we watched it all the way front to back. And once that comes around, I'll get her thoughts, because I've already kind of given my thoughts on Season 1. Season 2 continues, really, but I think this re-review will be more about what Lee experienced having watched it, and given her reactions to Mao Mao, like I'm excited. So I'm curious what she's going to have to say about Apothecary Diaries, Mao Mao, Jinshi, and all this other stuff, and then get into more diving into Season 2 proper. But that'll be in March, give or take. But that'll do for today, at least. And I will see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.